Marvel and its fans went through a phase of mourning. After the events of Endgame, there were a lot of hurt heroes out there. We as fans followed their journey to heal, and we also had some healing to do. During the height of the pandemic came the news. Chadwick Boseman had passed away of cancer. The shock we felt as fans was tremendous, and we still feel that up until today. The man is truly missed. So it was fitting Marvel ended this phase of mourning with Black Panther Wakanda Forever, a movie where the Marvel family said its farewell to the late Chadwick Boseman. It gave us fans a chance to mourn him as well. Again, he is missed. So, Phase 4 is over. WandaVision, The Falcon and the Winter Soldier, Loki Season 1, Black Widow, Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings, What If Season 1, Eternals, Hawkeye, Spider-Man No Way Home, Moon Knight, Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, Miss Marvel, Thor Love and Thunder, I Am Groot, She-Hulk Attorney at Law, Werewolf by Night, Black Panther Wakanda Forever, and last but not least, the Guardians of the Galaxy Holiday Special. That's a lot of content for just 2 years, and we are here to unpack it all. This is the podcast of champions, and I am your host, Grandmaster. Well, we have a powerful panel here to help me out, and let me introduce them to you first. First up, the man without fear, or the fan without fear, I should say, Mr. Taylorfirst. How are you doing tonight?
I'm great. There's no holding back in this discussion. I have notes.
Ooh. Well, we're in for a treat when Taylor brings notes. We have some guests here, voice only, starting with our female member of the panel, Lokismom. How are you doing today?
I'm doing really great. Just looking forward to the topic, and I'm intimidated because I did not bring notes.
The battle is on. Our second guest or panel member, voice only, I should say, but he's sitting on his throne room in Hades, as always. Mr. Lord Deathman, how are you?
I'm doing great today. The fires of Hades are stoked. I'm ready for this discussion. I also have notes.
Oh, I like this already. And last but certainly not least, Merv, how are you? Do you have notes?
Good. I plan on cheating off Taylor. So.
Oh, that's great to hear. That's great to hear. Now that we have introduced the panel, let me remind you to join our forum on Freeforms.net. It's that nice community full of nice fans who would love to engage you in the conversation about franchises and pop culture we love so much. And if you want and are willing, you can be on the podcast or one of our many review series. So, let's dive into our first topic. Phase 4 came to us after a gigantic climax in Avengers Endgame that ended the Infinity Saga. Well, technically it ended with Spider-Man Far From Home, but we can all agree that Endgame felt like the true finale of the Infinity Saga. And that finale left us wondering, what's to come? What's next? There were a lot of uncertainties going into Phase 4, and before we even started Phase 4, there was the hiccup of the pandemic. Maybe that gave us the breathing room we needed. Time to cleanse the palate. It was always going to be difficult to get invested again like we were the years leading up to Endgame, so that forced time off may have helped us getting there. Now we know we have started the Multiverse Saga. So how do we see Phase 4 against all this background? Was it what we needed? And I would like to ask the champions in the arena to give us any personal highlights, content, or personal experience they had in the fandom as well. Ladies first. Lokismom. How do you see Phase 4 as the aftermath of the Infinity Saga?
Well, I've been pretty critical of the whole thing. Not so much on the TV shows as on the movies. So I decided to go back and look at at least three of them. I looked at Black Widow, Shang-Chi, and then the Eternals just the other day, just to kind of remind myself of the plot and everything. And I, I think we've all given it short shrift because, we come off the Infinity Saga and it was so big. The biggest movie ever, made the most money ever. It was really a good movie. It just wrapped everything up in such a nice way that how they did it so successfully. Then, as you point out, we have the pandemic that sort of came in on the top of all this, and that threw not only us into chaos and the delay and confusion. It really wreaked havoc on Marvel. I mean, on the folks that produce and make these movies. They really had to contend and do with a lot. So I think, I'm going to try to be a little kinder about it. And I think just kind of going back and just reviewing everything over and over in my head and looking at a few things again, I have a little bit better or a little more feeling about it. I feel a little bit better about it. I think it kind of went haywire there toward the end with Thor and She-Hulk, but overall, I mean, it's not every movie's going to be great, and there's a lot of content to deal with here, and a lot of it's different, and there was a lot of experimentation. So, trying to take all that into consideration, I'm going to say by and large, Phase 4 was a success. In lieu of everything, and the fact that it's in the shadow of the other Phase 1 through 3. I'm going to say success.
Okay, but if you look at the Infinity Saga, it was 11 years in the making, and then you get to that big climax, and then what do we get now? Where are we going for? And do you feel like there's a clear picture where they're going, or is it still a little bit like a misty thing for you? Did Phase 4 give you enough satisfaction in that regard?
Well, I mean, like you said, it was 11 years in the making, and we've only had 2 years of demanding that Marvel, treat us again like they just did, which took them 11 years, and truth be told, probably didn't even mean to do. I mean, I think when they first started all these movies back with Iron Man, that I don't think they thought it was going to wind up, within Endgame Infinity Wars. Maybe they did. I don't know. Maybe they had an inkling of it, how they wanted to go. But I think it in a lot of ways, it probably went a different direction from what they expected. So, I think we're just putting too much on Marvel right now at the minute with everything that's been on it, and we're expecting too much. And I'm just trying to be less critical than what I have been, because I'm going to try to be more positive because we're going into the next phase.
Yeah, we're going to discuss that at the end of our podcast today. Taylor, you made notes, so let's get it.
The Infinity Saga really was amazing. They hit every beat. Even if they didn't have the whole thing planned out from the beginning, it sure felt like they had the whole thing planned out from the beginning. It was that seamless. It was that well executed. And then when it's over, that like you said, what happens next? And Marvel was on top of the world, and they may have thought to themselves, we can take some risks now. Now, they had always taken risks, but they took some big risks in Phase 4. And part of taking risks is bad things can happen. Now, I think overall, the quality of the product in Phase 4, the individual products, has been good for the most part. A lot of it's been really, really great. A couple of exceptions. But the quality of the products has been good. What's been lacking, or seems lacking at this point, and again, who knows what happens in Phase 5, but what seems lacking is the cohesion and the connectivity of all these different parts. And again, like Lokismom said, we're asking a lot of Marvel. They had a lot of moving pieces in this phase, and some of their main characters, the heart and soul of the MCU, were gone. Iron Man, Captain America. they had and most of the other main characters from the previous saga are kind of sidelined at this point, and we can talk about whether that's good or bad, or if it's just a fact of life and they couldn't help it. So they had to bring in new characters, a lot of new characters, and they had to start a new saga. So like I said, my initial impressions are, like I said, the product for the most part has been very good. I'm not seeing as much connectivity and as much of a plan as we saw previously. And then, of course, the other part is, all the new stuff that wasn't done. Now, the MCU Marvel had TV series starting in Phase 2, but they weren't closely aligned. They weren't directly connected to the series. Whether you think they're canon or you don't think they're canon, it doesn't matter, because they didn't connect directly to the movies either way. They didn't impact the movies in any significant way. Now, for the first time ever, I don't think it's ever been done in any franchise before, where you have TV series and movies linked like this, where Endgame leads to WandaVision, leads to Multiverse of Madness, and they're all essential. They're all one story, one character arc of Wanda. I don't think that's ever been done before. So they really did take a lot of risk by doing a lot of new things. Maybe they were doing it because, bottom line, the more product, the more money. Maybe that was their only thought. But maybe they thought they could overwhelm the competition. No one's even going to think about DC if we hit them with so much stuff that every month they're watching a Marvel product. Maybe that was part of the thought process. Maybe part of the thought process was just, now's our chance. Let's take all these risks and see what works, and then we'll keep the stuff that works and get rid of the stuff that doesn't. Again, at this point, we don't know, and we don't know how it's going to work. But so far, Phase 4 for me, again, the quality of the products for me has been top notch for the most part. We'll get to the little exceptions, the big green exception here in a little while. But overall, the product has been good. But so far, I'm just not seeing the connectivity yet. And again, maybe we'll have the big aha moment in Phase 5. Oh, that's why they did all that stuff in Phase 4. But I'm not sure at this point.
I forgot to ask Lokismom, but I'm going to ask you. Any personal highlight in Phase 4 for you? Taylor?
Oh, personal highlights for me? Oh, God, where to start? WandaVision. My God. WandaVision is one of the greatest TV shows ever made. It was fantastic. Spider-Man, No Way Home, which, by the way, is the third biggest money-making movie in the MCU after Endgame and Infinity War. Huge achievement for them. Huge win for them. Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness is a highlight for me. Love that movie. The TV series, Hawkeye is another highlight for me. I think Black Widow is actually a highlight. I love Black Widow, and I thought it was a great way to end Wanda's saga. However, that means that's a third, main character who's not with us anymore, even though she was already dead. But they did the prequel with her. Eternals is another highlight. Again, a risk, and they suffered a little bit at the box office and with the critics with Eternals. But I think they did a great job with Eternals, and a great job of introducing this whole new group of characters who have a whole different backstory and a whole different section of the universe that they can bring in now. So those are some of my highlights right there.
Okay, Merv, I want to hear your thoughts now. What did you think about Phase 4 after everything we got before?
Phase 4, it was a bit of a mess, both in storyline and out of storyline. But I think it was always going to be a hard thing, right? Following 10 plus years of a storyline with, sprawling ambition, and then a climax like the Infinity Saga, and then where do you go from there without, Iron Man, Captain America, Black Widow, unfortunately Black Panther, and you don't have control over your Spider-Man character fully. It was going to be a huge uphill battle to keep people invested and to where do you go whenever you lose that much of your top tier, storyline talent, your main superheroes? So I think in that regard, it's a bit of a resetting the stage. There's a little bit of, some things are a little messier than others, but it's really just, I hesitate to say it's like phase one, because you're also like wrapping some things up in progressing the storyline for certain characters and ending storylines for other ones. But you're also like kind of starting a new, okay, well, what's going on now? And they've started so many, you know, they've introduced so many new characters. And is it too many? Maybe it is, but between Shang-Chi, Eternals, and the new Black Panther and everything, it's just they've really pulled a lot of the toys out of the toy chest. I use that analogy a lot, but there's just a lot of pieces in play. And I'm excited for it, but I guess the fun thing is how varied each product has felt. And the unfun thing, like Taylor said, is that we don't really know where it's all leading. We've gotten kind of used to all these stories, even just at least having background symmetry. Like we know where they're going. And Phase 5 may clear all of this up, but as of Phase 4, it's still kind of like, they just threw this against the wall and threw this against the wall, and some things stick better than others. But overall, I have to agree, like the quality's been great. I've really enjoyed pretty much everything, at least movie-wise, in Phase 4. Some of the TV shows are forgettable, and some of them I really didn't like. But as far as movies go, I don't have any super complaints about any of that. Yeah, it's been a roller coaster, and it's a bit of a bumpy ride, but I think, I hope, put it that way, that I'll look back on Phase 4 like I did Age of Ultron, where I'm like, oh, they were doing a lot of things here, but it wasn't clear at the time. It was clear, 6 years later. Hopefully we don't have to wait that long, but down the road a bit. As far as personal highlights go, I have to agree, Black Widow, even after all of this Phase 4, I still go back to that one as just one of the easiest to watch movies. Like I've only seen it. I watched it the first time in January, and I've watched it probably 4 or 5 times this year. Like, and that, to me, that feels like a lot. Like I don't watch it every day or every week or anything, but like maybe once a month, I'm like, oh, I'll just put Black Widow on, and it's fun. Evil Wanda is another personal highlight of mine. Whenever they introduced that character in Age of Ultron, or whenever they first showed her, my first thought was the comic storyline, Avengers Disassembled and House of M, and all of that centers on Wanda losing control of her powers and going crazy. So seeing that on the live screen was fantastic. I've got to give props to seeing all 3 live-action Spider-Men in a movie together. Tobey Maguire, Andrew Garfield, and Tom Holland. I mean, it felt, that felt like 20 years of build-up, and then, just a huge reward there for fans of all the Spider-Man movie franchises in general. Yeah, it's been a bumpy ride, but I've really enjoyed it a lot. And again, I don't think we have enough information now to see the forest beyond the trees, but hopefully in Phase 5 it clears it up. But as of right now, it's a little scatterbrained.
Okay. And last but certainly not least, I want to hear Lord Deathman's opinion. Do you agree with the panel members, or do you have a fresh perspective?
Well, I just want to say that the panel members have effectively eliminated about 50% of my notes with their insights. So it's always awesome to be here with some like-minded individuals. And that means I'm just going to have a lot less to say. But that being said, I have to agree with everyone in terms of how phenomenal the first 3 phases of the MCU was, taking us into the Infinity Saga. A lot of people felt like there was a cathartic moment at the end of Endgame where the saga had sort of wrapped itself up, and they felt like this was a good point to move on. And I totally sympathized with that feeling, especially for some casual fans that have been following it for a decade or more. This felt like a good, this is the right time for me to be less engaged with it. But what I think more about the Infinity Saga is not how well it was constructed, or not how well it was interconnected or interwoven. All of that stuff is just proven by the performance of that phase. But really, like I think it was really the core storytelling above all else that made that phase so successful. The basic story is you have this megalomaniacal figure trying to gather these artifacts, and you have these superheroes all over the different corners of the Marvel universe trying to stop him or frustrate his efforts. That feels, in line with like Indiana Jones level storytelling. There's a MacGuffin, and someone's trying to get it, and someone else is also trying to get it, and they're competing in those efforts. And I think that that basic level of storytelling that it forms the core of the Infinity Saga made it possible for so many people to get into it. You knew who the heroes were, you knew who your bad guys were, and you knew what the struggle was, and you're kind of focused on the MacGuffin. Where is the football at any given moment in this storytelling? And that changes in phase 4 in a way that I want to talk about, and I think is really the focus for why phase 4, as kind of an experiment and a continuation, some people feel really let down on it. My personal feeling on phase 4 is that other than one movie, I really loved it. I love the introduction of the new characters. I love Black Widow the same way Merv does. I've watched it 2 or 3 times at this point. I thought it was an exceptional film. I'm more than willing to say that it was a little too little and too late at the point that they gave it to us. But when they did, they crafted a high quality Marvel product, in my opinion. So I really do like that film. But when you look at phase 4, it's not that kind of mythic campfire storytelling. Now you're getting into a kind of storytelling that is much more esoteric. And I'm not throwing out the word esoteric as an SAT word to throw off our listeners. I really do mean that only a small group of people who are into comic books really get the concept of a multiverse and the idea that there's variants of people, and that those things could be running at cross purposes. There's no longer, oh, let me keep my eye on the MacGuffin. This is level 2 comic book storytelling. And I think you might have had some people just fall off. The idea of a multiverse, the idea of time travel, the idea of things being produced as variants and duplicates. It's not quite as iconic. You need more grounding and training from your comic book fan ambassadors to kind of get into it. So I think you might have seen some fall off just because we're kind of moving to a higher echelon of comic book and sci-fi speculative sort of fiction storytelling. And also, whereas in the early phases, we were trying to bring C-list characters to the table with Captain America, Thor. These are characters that didn't sell as well as Spider-Man or some of your mega popular characters, but people still know who Iron Man is, who Thor is, et cetera, et cetera. When you get to phase 4, what's the Shang-Chi? Is Eternal something I spread on a sandwich? Moon Knight, you're like, now you're trying to lift D-list and even F-list characters up into the popular conscious. And I just think it was a heavy lift. But let me get to my thesis here about phase 4 in terms of the main bullet points for why I think, this wasn't as successful as early phases. One, that loss of crowd pleasing storytelling in terms of the simplified MacGuffin chase, losing a lot of celebrity talent, whether people just decided to move on from their roles or whether you had a tragic death like, uh, oh my God, his name is escaping me, Chadwick Boseman. With his passing, there was a lot of passing the torch, and we lost some of the really familiar faces that the crowds and the fans have really gotten used to over the years. This phase also had to serve a lot of masters. You had to do new introductions. You also had to do some really big iconic storytelling that everybody's used to with No Way Home and in the Multiverse of Madness. Those were designed to be crowd pleasers, whereas Eternals and Shang-Chi and things like Moon Knight were, let's do some new introduction of characters. I also think we might have gotten off on the wrong foot starting the phase with Black Widow a movie that didn't really seem all that relevant because you were telling a story about a character who was already deceased. So, again, not the best way to kind of head into another iconic bucket of storytelling, if you will. But my highlights from this phase, now that I've kind of laid out what I think of both of them, I really loved phase 4. I just want to emphasize that. And I really enjoyed storytelling like Eternals and Shang-Chi. My highlights from phase 4 in the film department are definitely Black Widow, Eternals, and Shang-Chi. And I know that that's going to be controversial to the panel because where's No Way Home? Where's In the Multiverse of Madness? Those are great films, highly entertaining, and built on the backbone legacy of the past with that director who was involved, Sam Raimi. But those are crowd pleasers, and I think those are a little easier for Marvel to do than it would have been to take chances with things like Eternals and Shang-Chi. On the television side, for me, I think overall it was a win. There was very little that I didn't like coming out of television, but my highlights there are WandaVision, The Falcon and the Winter Soldier. I loved Loki, and I also enjoyed Moon Knight. How did they do in terms of their scorecard, though, in terms of setting up the saga? We're in the multiverse saga, and we're supposed to be getting multiverse storytelling. Really, the only movies that emphasize that are No Way Home, Multiverse of Madness, and What If. Out of all the television shows, What If is like the only place where we actually go to the multiverse. So I don't think they laid the groundwork for the saga as well as they could have, but they had lots of content opportunities to do so. But that being said, again, anything that I might have disliked, I'm not the biggest Thor Love and Thunder fan. I just think Taika Waititi, the worst pronunciation ever. I think he missed the mark and kind of tried to play it safe, doing what he had done with Ragnarok, kind of all over again. And on TV, definitely not the biggest She-Hulk fan. I think a lot of agenda-based storytelling crept into there when comic book fans are really looking for action, fantasy, fun, escapism. They kind of missed the mark there. I just got through Miss Marvel, which I liked a lot more than I thought that I would. But overall, the storytelling just really didn't seem as dynamic as some of the other television shows that you got. I thought Miss Marvel was a little on the flat side, but definitely far better than I thought it was going to be when I was kind of procrastinating on watching all of the episodes. So not a failure, but simply just not on the level that I'm used to of Marvel performing. But yeah, those are my highlights. Those are my theories on all of the phases that have come so far, and that's where I think we landed, and where we might not have had the best possible phase 4 that we could have. And let's not forget about the pandemic as well.
And with that being said, I would like to move on to our second topic.